Zig Ziglar once said that honesty makes the way for change. Well, today on Growing Hope, we're going to be talking about how honesty is going to make the way for us to admit the problems so that we can get to the place where we can have the balance that's going to let us live a life in purpose and on purpose.
It's time for Growing Hope, the show determined to grow up hearts open to pursue the extraordinary. Because you are extraordinary! And now, live from a little cabin in the woods, nestled along Big Spring Creek, it's your host, Kathryn Lang.
Hello there, and welcome to Growing Hope, where we are creating a life of purpose, for purpose, and in purpose. I am Kathryn Lang, your resident Hope Smith and spreader of snarky rainbows. I am thankful that you're joining me today because, if I can be honest with you, your investment in Growing Hope, it is what holds me accountable to do what I know I have to do. So thank you for making that investment. I'm truly honored that you're taking your time and investing your time in this journey for balance. Life is just not as much fun if you don't have your balance. And life's not as much fun if you don't have folks going with you. When you don't have balance, you're limited to what you can do. When you don't have balance, you're limited to where you can go. You need your balance to stand, to walk, to do. And stress becomes a factor when you don't have your balance, especially when the off-balance moments involve the checkbook. Finances can cause a lot of stress. So we need balance. We need balance in our life, for our life, and throughout our life. If we're going to have balance, then we're going to have to be honest. Honesty makes the way for change. Honesty makes the way for balance. But honesty isn't always fun or pleasant. And it isn't always the easiest path to take. But it is always the desired way we need to go. Honesty can get downright annoying at times. Like the time my husband was honest with me about what he was feeling while we were sitting there watching TV. You know, back at the time when you had to actually watch TV and then you had to watch the commercials. It was during one of those commercial breaks that my husband took the opportunity to let his honesty fly. He said, "I don't like you. Sometimes I don't even like being around you." Ouch. Then the commercial was over and he was back to watching his show. The honest encounter isn't something I would have deemed pleasant or wanted or requested, but his honest words did create a way for my change because of the choices that I made from the words that he shared. We have to be honest about our problems if we're going to make room for real change. So how do we get honest about our problems? Well, first we have to rip off the blinders, because you can't be honest about what you can't see or what you won't see. Second, we have to do a real evaluation. We have to examine where we are, why we're there, and what got us there. Third, we have to allow for raw exposure. Honesty can rub you wrong at times, or at least it can feel like it's rubbing you wrong. But sometimes you have to have that raw exposure to be in a position to see the light. Fourth, you have to root out the real reasons for the problem. The real reasons for the problem rarely reside at the surface. And fifth, you have to reveal the need for change. Change for the sake of change won't accomplish anything. It's just wasted time and energy. So you have to decide what is the need behind this change that you're pursuing. Honesty is the best policy. Even if you're sitting with your husband on the couch. Honesty is the best policy when it comes to building your foundation for a balanced life. Honesty is important to position you to get to where you want to be and to help you do what it is you want to do. If you're not going to be honest about the journey, then you're never going to be able to reach the destination that you want to reach. If you're not going to be honest about why you're taking the journey, you're never going to reach the destination that you want to reach. If I'm doing something because someone else has told me I have to do it, then my motivation, inspiration, and fuel to get there is limited by their expectations. And if I can get around their expectations, then I can get away from having to do it. But if I'm honest about where I am and where I'm going, then I position myself to do more than I could imagine possible. We have to be honest. Change is going to be up to you. Change is up to me in my life. Change is up to you in your life. But change is only made possible when you make the choice for honesty. You cannot create change if you're not honest about the need or direction for change. Honesty probably isn't the natural response most of us have. I mean, after all, we live in a society that practically shoves lies down our throat. Shoves lies, half-truths, maybe, outright deception when necessary. I mean, how many times have you said, "Oh, we'll try to make it," knowing full well that you have no intention of going, let alone even trying to get there? We are trained to avoid hurting people's feelings, and we're trained to avoid fueling offensive natures. And this trains us to avoid the practice of honesty. It's no wonder that we're so good and so practiced and so well versed at fooling ourselves. We do it all the time. We have to get honest about where we're going if we're going to make the way for change for our life. Honesty is a purposeful choice. You have to be intentional about choosing honesty. As long as you can ignore or avoid or make excuses that you don't have to do it, then you aren't going to get honest. The spring before the tornadoes hit, I was all about the gardening. Gardening's a big part of my dreams. But we cleaned out the vegetable garden, and then we straightened up the rows of daylilies and iris that had yet to be planted into the flower garden. They were just kind of healed in, waiting for their turn. And we organized the shed, and we even created and by we, I mean me, just to get that straight, we created a platform on the side of the shed so that I could put pot up all of my extras, all the extra daylilies and even the crosses that I was doing, because I was learning how to cross-pollinate. Because I had determined that I was going to start selling my extras. Although, if I'm really honest about the situation, I had determined that it would be the perfect business for my boys to start. Which just goes to show you how well you can fool yourself when you try. But still, things were looking good. Now, that was over 8 years ago. I've avoided the shed with everything I can. I have avoided the shed like it's carrying the plague. And if you go down to the shed, it's possible that it actually is carrying the plague. It has not been well maintained. And I've ignored it on purpose because I know that it's not well maintained. But I was forced to go down there recently, and it was like getting slapped in the face. I really was shocked. Although I shouldn't have been shocked, because I knew I'd been working at avoiding the shed because I knew how bad it was. That's why I was avoiding it, because it was so bad. But it wasn't until that moment when it hit me in the face, when I saw it, that I actually was finally honest about the situation. We don't want to be honest about the problems or the issues, because seeing it for what it is and admitting our part is not fun. But if we're going to live out the possibilities, then we have to be honest. So the first step in that direction requires taking off the blinders. As long as you allow yourself to remain blind to the problem, you won't be in a position to deal with the problem. And just like the shed, you can get very creative about how you hide the truth from yourself. See, I've been doing live recordings of this show, which just means that I do it all in one take. I don't edit it. I don't go back and do retakes. It is what it is, and that's why I sometimes forget my own name. But it turns out, if you want to get honest with yourself about where you are, get it on tape. There's no way to avoid being honest when you're right there in front of you, and it rips the blinders right off. I was putting together the post that I do that shares the video, and I usually take my time. I usually set things up so it all looks like it's supposed to do. But this particular video, it was quick. I had to get it done. And when I reviewed the video, I really literally cried out. I couldn't believe the image that was staring back at me. In all my other videos, in presentations that I've been doing, I have been intentional about the right angles, and I've been avoiding the shots that might reveal the truth, but not this time. I was rushed. I didn't really think about it. And there it was. Raw and real was staring back at me. And I didn't like it. And to be honest, because we're being honest, since I could, I started to delete the show and just do it all again. I was this close to wiping it off the map because I was so unhappy with the honesty that was staring back at me. But I know I need to be honest, not just with myself, but with you as well. The real truth is that the image staring back at me, no matter how uncomfortable it might make me, it didn't change my heart. And it didn't change the words that I was sharing. So I didn't change the image. But seeing that video did make me take off the blinders. I had to get honest about where I was. Seeing really is believing. Now, the second step for being honest is to have a real evaluation. Because if you don't examine where you are, and even how you got there, then you can't be honest about what you're going to do next. When you get lost while driving, do you just keep driving? Or do you stop to evaluate your position? If you just keep driving, then you'll probably stay lost. Or at least I always did. If you don't evaluate where your current position is, then you end up wasting time and energy trying to get somewhere that you don't even know or understand. You won't have to, if you don't stop and evaluate where you're going, then you can't honestly expect to arrive where you want to be. The third step to being honest is to allow for a raw exposure. The truth may set you free, but it often rubs you the wrong way along the way. Honesty can be rough business, especially when you don't see it coming. I was sitting in the living room just the other day, minding my own business and watching some TV, perfectly content in my active application of not doing anything. My husband was sitting there as well, although he was on his phone watching video there. And he looked up at the show I was watching and he said, "Isn't this what you've told your kids not to watch?" Now, my husband and I don't have a great track record on these honest moments in front of the TV. And maybe that's, a good sign that I should keep him away from the TV. But more likely it's a sign that I don't need to be in front of the TV quite so much. It bothered me that he said it, but it didn't bother me that he said it because it was from him or it was his words. It bothered me because it exposed several truths. Ugh. One, I didn't need to be watching the show. And two, I didn't need to be watching TV. And three, I needed to be doing what I knew to be doing instead of what I was doing. The raw exposure of my situation encouraged me to make better choices. And the fourth step is to root out the real reason. Why? The real reason isn't on the surface. You're going to have to dig down and uncover what it is. And finally, the fifth one is to to express the need. What's the need for this change? There is so much going on in our lives right now that is pushing us for change. It is pushing us to do something different. It is pushing us to be more than we are. Now, sometimes it's us. Sometimes it's they. They said, they want, they. But they will never be a good enough reason for our change. They will never be able to fuel what we're trying to do. We have to make the choice. We have to see it, and we have to do it. Change can only happen from within. Change is up to you. Even the change you want for the world, your world, that's up to you, because the change begins with the choices you make. You need to get brutally honest about your journey if you're going to live a balanced life. If you want change, if you truly want change, then you have to be honest. Honesty will make a way for change. My relationship with procrastination started way back when, but I remember it at its peak in high school and college, where I mastered the art of putting tasks off. I would put it off until it literally could not be put off any longer. I would tell myself that I did my best when a deadline was looming right there on the edge, or I used that as my excuse, whichever. But the point was, I wouldn't do it until I had to do it. When I started writing for a living, I continued to flirt with procrastination. I would put off a job until the last minute because I knew I could put it off and still get it done. Once you learn that, procrastination can move in. But when I hit the high school levels as a homeschool mom, I began to understand the damage procrastination could cause. Not only because it limited the outcome. You can't do your best work if you procrastinate. It also could cause harm to the health of the project creator. Stress, frustration, raw nerves, all of this kind of stuff. It doesn't only affect the person that it is on, but it affects everyone around them. So when I saw something in my children that I had fostered in myself, I had to get honest. I had to get honest about my relationship with procrastination. It wasn't that I worked better under procrastination, under pressure, under deadlines. The truth was that I just didn't want to do what I knew I needed to do. I was just putting it off. And once I got honest, I began to make changes, little bits at a time, but they eventually began to add up. And I found that procrastination doesn't get to hang around when you do little bits at a time. You have to get honest. If you're going to make a way for your change, it's up to you. Rip off the blinders. Do a real evaluation. Allow for raw exposure. Root out the reasons and reveal the need for your change. Are you ready to get honest? I'm here to help you. Thank you so much for joining me. Connect with me over at contact@growinghoperadio.com so that we can talk about this journey. We can talk about where you're struggling or why you're struggling or even what's causing the struggle. I'm here to work with you because I know that when we work together, we can find the answers. And what's really neat about working together is that often the answers that we share are not the answers for the other person, but for ourselves. As we're talking and sharing and engaging and connecting, we discover that what I really needed was what I shared with you. It's amazing how that works. When we're invested in encouraging each other and growing up relationships, we invest in ourselves at the same time. That's just the way it works. When we're growing relationships, we're growing our possibilities. So if you want to live a balanced life, be invested in other people. Be invested in helping other people walk out their balanced life. That's how you're going to get to the place that you want to be, by investing in others. It really does come down to that. It's all about relationships, whatever it is you're trying to do, whether you're trying to find your balance, you're trying to be honest about this situation, or you're just trying to take that next little bit and get it done. In the end, it is the relationships that will make the difference. Until next time, remember, I am Kathryn Lang. I'm your Rainbows and Lollipops host, because every day holds a promise of more and every action contains the power of possibility. It's not about what the world says or even what the world shows. The strength of hope and encouragement will and does push through the limits and the walls of the world. My prayer is and always will be that the words I share with you are helping establish a foundation of hope that will shatter the delusions of the world around us. Until next time, remember, be blessed, and in all that you're doing, be a blessing.
Thank you for joining us for Growing Hope with Kathryn Lang, where we are sharing hope, encouragement, and inspiration to do more. Visit www.kathrynlang.com to invite Kathryn to be part of your event or to share your own stories of possibility living. Until next time, remember that a seed of hope planted and nurtured will grow up into a world of possibilities.